Coming up today on the Nick Craig Show, a bombshell address to the nation as President Donald Trump highlights election integrity issues across the United States. Some major influence from foreign adversaries. We'll have all the details coming up. And a good Friday morning to you. Welcome into the Nick Craig Show, streaming live this morning on YouTube, Rumble, X, and Facebook. Don't forget that you can take the program with you 24/7 on demand. It is real easy and completely free to do so. Head on over to your favorite podcast app, search for the Nick Craig Show, tap the subscribe or follow button, and take a new program with you each and every weekday morning. Our program sponsored by the Law Group. Melissa Gott and her team. LawGroupNC.com is their website, and you can always get access to our daily show notes and more. Those are available over on our website, or on the website, I should say, patreon.com/Nick Craig. Earlier this week, we learned that President Donald Trump would be addressing the nation Thursday night on a major primetime address that, of course, a couple of the left-wing media outlets here in the United States, ABC and NBC, decided not to carry a 9 p.m. primetime address by the President of the United States. And now that we have seen that come and go, it explains why they did not want to cover it. As the president started off his address, he spoke on the importance of free and fair elections, announcing the declassification of internal U.S. intelligence that reveals major vulnerabilities as it relates to the United States election system, highlighting a deep state government that knew that this stuff was going on, wrote the reports on it, and didn't bother to inform first the President of the United States or Congress. We have an election integrity problem in the United States. And the reason we have an election integrity problem is because things go on and individuals are unwilling to speak of it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to cover it. They don't want to dive into it in any way, shape, or form. That is why we have an election integrity problem. And some of the details, as the president spoke for just shy of 40 minutes last night, are shocking. And we'll go through them, including things like the Chinese Communist Party stealing more than 200 million voter registrations in the United States, a plan by the Chinese to print ballots to gain access to voting machines and tabulators across the United States. This stuff was known by our intel community, and the president, Congress, high-up officials within the United States federal government were not made aware. That's why we have an election integrity problem, because this information was known. Presumably, if they were going through the process of writing these reports, and the president, as we'll hear from him in just a minute, highlights some of the quotes in the reports. This is absolutely paramount that the American people know what's going on. The American people absolutely need to know that there is a foreign adversary like China that is stealing voter registration information and trying to manipulate United States elections. Here is the open from President Donald Trump yesterday.
Because no country can be great without fair and honest elections. You have to trust your country, because if there can be no trust, there can be no greatness. And that's very simple. No trust, no greatness. For many years, I've called for bold, swift, and decisive action to protect the integrity of America's elections. Every American deserves to know that when they cast their vote, that vote will be counted accurately in a system, and that is to make that system secure, one where cheating and interference are not just difficult, but virtually impossible. Unfortunately, the system we have today falls catastrophically short of that standard.
Not only does it fall majorly short of that standard, or catastrophically short, as the president says, but it has now turned into some major political battle where Democrats seemingly will claim election integrity is not an issue. It's not a problem. Just trust us. Just trust me, bro. Don't look behind the curtain. Don't bother reading into or making sure that you're informed as to what's going on. Just trust me. Just trust us. We're the Democrat Party. You have to gain that level of trust. And I think it is fair to say, with what we have seen in the past, with election officials in Georgia taping pizza boxes over windows while they're allegedly counting ballots, that doesn't inspire trust. Why would you need to duct tape Domino's pizza boxes to the windows of a place where ballots are being cast, or ballots are being tallied? Excuse me. Why would you need to do that? Explain to me the universe that exists in which individuals watching the process of ballots being counted needs to be disrupted by pizza boxes being duct taped to windows. Give me a good answer as to how that is logical. Let's look at what has recently gone on in the state of California. Explain that process to me. It doesn't inspire trust. That doesn't mean that there is necessarily fraud going on, but guess what it does do? It opens up the door pretty significantly for people to start questioning, why would this stuff be going on? Why would you be shielding the public away from seeing you counting ballots? This is a public process. This is a government function that is taking place. Why would that be hidden from the American people? And most logical people go to, I think, a logical conclusion. The only reason you would try to hide what is going on is if you're doing something illegal, if you're rigging the system, if you are cheating, because otherwise all you're doing is running pieces of paper through ballot counters or ballot tabulators. There's nothing there. But when you tape a bunch of pizza boxes to the window, that causes people to be skeptical, and rightfully so. When you see government acting in that manner, you have it right, and I think you should question what is going on. Here's more details from the president on some of these reports.
Tonight, I'm announcing the immediate declassification and release of critical intelligence revealing shocking vulnerabilities in our election infrastructure. This evidence shows that the election system we have dangerously exposes like levels never thought possible to hacking, exploitation, and foreign interference. Just as disturbingly, this vital information has for many years been covered up and hidden from you, the American people, our beautiful, our great American people. But that all changes right now. The documents we will release starting tonight have been gathered by the White House Government Transparency Task Force, a great group of people, along with the staff of the President's Intelligence Advisory Board, supported by our top intelligence agency chiefs, who have all personally reviewed the findings. We are presenting this evening and fully confirmed their authenticity.
That's the scary part about this. The president is and will lay out 5 major pieces as it relates to these catastrophic vulnerabilities that exist within our election systems in a variety of different manners across the United States. Intel individuals, the 3-letter agencies that you're aware of, the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, and plenty of others, knew that these vulnerabilities existed. And the reason I can say that confidently is, well, because the president published the reports. The reports are dated. The reports highlight some of the issues that they have intelligence to bring forward, to put into a report. So obviously they knew what was going on. Obviously they knew that these exploits and these vulnerabilities exist. And instead of making sure that the American people are aware of those issues, what did they do? Claim that every election is the most safe and secure, knowing that these major holes, these major vulnerabilities exist. That is how you begin the process of completely eroding away the trust of the American people. And I, and like many of you, am in that position right now where honestly, I don't know if I can trust the system. I don't know if I can trust to make sure that ballots and elections are being run in a fair, free, and safe manner. I can't say that confidently because of these actions. That's why. I didn't do anything wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. We have watched this stuff unfold in front of our very eyes. And it's only human nature as an individual, like many of you, who is genuinely somebody that genuinely doesn't trust government inherently. When you start seeing some of this stuff go on, you begin to ask the question, maybe something bigger is going on here. Maybe there's more than meets the eye. President Donald Trump addressing the nation Thursday night in a primetime address, talking about election integrity, some election vulnerabilities, a bombshell address to the nation by the president. He laid out 5 major issues that he and his team have been able to uncover, not the investigations that they've done, but investigations that have been done by previous CIAs, NSAs, FBIs, and other 3-letter agencies that were not previously available. The first major issue, China, well, they stole your information. They hacked 200 plus million voter files. Take a listen.
The documents cover 5 major areas of concern. First, they show that over a period of years, starting during the 2020 election cycle, the People's Republic of China carried out what is believed to be the largest compromise of election data in history, resulting in China's illicit acquisition of 220 million U.S. voter files. That information includes names, addresses, phone numbers, political party preferences, and other sensitive data that would be needed to register to vote and engage in other nefarious activities, which is exactly what was happening. This data loss presents an unprecedented election security nightmare. The intelligence even shows that China assigned a data exploitation unit specifically to this new project.
Is that not a major concern for you? Do you not hear that previous intelligence agencies within the United States, going all the way back to 2020, determined that China stole upwards of 220 million voter registration files across the United States? It's more than 75% of the U.S. population. And again, note that the entire U.S. population is not eligible to vote, as many of the individuals that make up, 330 million people in the United States are under the age of 18. So, of course, they are not eligible to vote. A large portion of the United States populace, the voting populace, had their information compromised by the Chinese Communist Party. That should have been something that the American people were aware of. But as the president says, the 3-letter agencies, these intel entities, didn't bother making this information available and did nothing. Take a listen.
Compounding the travesty, the second set of documents we are releasing reveals that members of the deep state, very, very famous group of people, in many cases, in our intelligence agency work to actively suppress and downplay information about the extent of China's sinister election meddling.
Are you surprised to hear this? I mean, I'm not. That the deep state, these highly compensated scumbag bureaucrats within the United States federal government knew of these risks, wrote reports on these risks, and didn't bother informing the president, Congress, or the American people as to what was going on? That should be a huge red flag, and it is to me.
Covering it up from both the president and the American people like nobody thought was possible. U.S. spy agencies began learning about the compromise of voter registration files in 2020 when they discovered that tens of millions of voter data, think of that, tens of millions of voters' data in 18 states have been bought, stolen, or hacked by China. Yet those responsible for sounding the alarm instead kept the information secret and hidden. They did not disclose to me as president or to anyone else, and to the best of our knowledge, they did not inform Congress. In fact, all they kept saying is, this is the most secure election in the history of our country. A standard, very pat line that was divvied out to say the cover-up of this colossal security breach.
And that's exactly what happened. Because for the intel community, for these deep staters who are all far left, progressive radicals, hate Donald Trump, hate the Republican Party, hate you and I, hate conservatives, had they shined a light onto the information that they knew, that could have caused a major problem in the election. And of course, they didn't want to do that. They didn't truly care about the safety and the security of the United States election. They just wanted to make sure that their guy won. And to make sure their guy won, one of the pieces of that puzzle is to make sure that the American public is not aware of what's going on. Make sure and lie to the American people and say, our elections are totally secure. How dare you make such an accusation? No, you can't say that. You're a crazy right-wing conspiracy theorist if you believe that groups could be meddling in our elections. Listen to some of the details. This stuff is nuts.
As the documents we are releasing show, CIA reporting explicitly stated, and I quote, in mid-2018, the Chinese Communist Party's policy was to leverage all domestic and foreign elements that were opposed to the U.S. president in an effort to reduce the U.S. president's votes and make him resign or prevent his re-election. Isn't that nice? Also, in mid-2018, China was working to influence the results of the U.S. midterm elections and later the results of the 2020 presidential election itself. Separately, in mid-2019, the Chinese government's strategy against the United States was focused on undermining domestic confidence in the U.S. president. They wanted to just make you sound like your president wasn't so hot, when actually your president has done a great job, and they did everything possible to do exactly that. Going on, this document says, and this is by the CIA, the strategy included efforts to use Chinese contacts with big U.S. companies to influence U.S. business leaders to turn against the President of the United States of America. The Chinese government sought to identify U.S. journalists who had reported negatively on the U.S. president and pay them large sums of money to write more negative articles about him, as many as they could, and they didn't care what they said. The Chinese government wanted U.S. president to lose the next election, and the reason they wanted me to lose is because they knew I was wise to them, charged them billions and billions of dollars worth of tariffs, and built the strongest military anywhere in the world. We have the strongest military anywhere in the world.
So there's a couple of the details from President Donald Trump as to these efforts that were going on as far back as 2018, 2019. The CIA writing, the most damning part of this entire thing is that the president is reading from the now declassified reports, right? For years, Democrats have been screaming, you can't claim our elections are vulnerable. You don't have any evidence. You're just a crazy right-wing conspiracy theorist. Where's the proof? So that's the proof. There begins the process of laying out the evidence that this is a real thing. This is the process of laying out what exactly was going on, that our intelligence communities knew that this stuff was going on, and mum was the word. Trump, who was in the Oval Office all the way through 2020, was not aware. Congress was not aware. The American people not aware, because it wouldn't have been good politically for these three-letter agencies to make this information available to the American people. That is so incredibly disheartening. That is so miserable to hear. But unfortunately, what many of us did fear was the case is now turning out to be, well, pretty damn accurate, unfortunately. We'll hear more from President Trump coming up here in just a couple of minutes. Before that, I want to tell you about the Law Group here in Wilmington. Thank them for their continued support and remind you that if you have any legal questions or challenges that arise for you, your family, or your business, make sure you put your trust in the Law Group right here in Wilmington. Since 2003, Melissa Gott and her experienced team of attorneys have provided high-quality, affordable legal services across the eastern half of North Carolina. No matter the issue that you are facing, a divorce, a real estate transaction, maybe you need a strong criminal defense, it doesn't matter. The Law Group has your back. Their dedicated team ensures your questions are answered and issues are resolved as quickly as possible. Great news, folks. They're located in downtown Wilmington and just a phone call away at 910-251-6088, or you can visit them online at lawgroupnc.com. That's 910-251-6088, or online at lawgroupnc.com. It's the Law Group. Experience and dedication you can rely on. We appreciate the Law Group and their continued support here of the Nick Craig Show. More from President Donald Trump's address to the nation coming up as the Nick Craig Show rolls on a busy Friday morning, streaming live 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, and available 24/7 wherever you get your podcasts. And a good Friday to you. Welcome back to the Nick Craig Show, continuing our coverage of a major announcement, a major address to the nation Thursday night by President Donald Trump, highlighting some major vulnerabilities within the United States election system. The president highlighting that the Chinese went through major process of grabbing and stealing U.S. voter registration data. The intel communities going back as far as 2018, 2019, had evidence that this was going on, at least enough evidence to put it in reports, enough evidence to document it somewhere. Unfortunately, they chose that, decided that the United States people, that Congress, that the President of the United States, and nobody else needed to know. So we just heard from the president that this was well known by those individuals within the intel community. The President, Congress, nobody was briefed on this issue. Listen to this more about what China was actually trying to do.
But it gets even worse. Raw intelligence obtained by the FBI in 2020, yet buried by rogue bureaucrats, stated that China's activities even included an attempt to manufacture illegal ballots for Joe Biden. Documents show that during this period, dozens of significant CIA and NSA reports about China's election targeting were kept out of the presidential briefing. These were briefings I would get almost every day. Everything was kept out that was of importance. One email among intelligence analysts admitted that they had, quote, deliberately massaged the presidential daily briefing to withhold information regarding Chinese activities related to the election.
I got to stop that right there. You just listen to what came out of the president's mouth that the intel community said in an email. This isn't made up. This is not we think this is what happened. No, correspondence saying that we are, quote, massaging this intelligence, aka misleading this intelligence to make sure that the president of the United States, when he gets his daily briefing, does not know about the Chinese and their attempted activities or potential activities within our election. Anybody that says that the deep state is dead, anybody that says that the deep state is on life support is clueless. This is unfortunately alive and well here across the United States.
Another official inside the FBI wrote that she was running, quote, a shadow government, unquote, to keep intelligence about China's election meddling from becoming known and to keep it away from the honorable press. Other officials who witnessed such efforts perceived the motivations to be blatantly political.
Oh, 100% political. The only reason that this information wasn't given to Donald Trump is because the Democrats knew he would, of course, talk about it. He would bring it up, as you would expect as the president of the United States. And so they had to continue to lie to the American people and claim that everything's fine here. Go look over there. Go find something else to play with. Nothing to see here as it relates to elections. Running a shadow government, massaging intel to make sure that the president of the United States isn't aware of what's going on. Wow. Incredibly damning accusations. Here's more on one of the other major issues that the president highlighted out of his 5 dealing with election infrastructure across the United States.
The third set of documents we are releasing proves that for many years, Americans were blatantly lied to about the security of our election infrastructure, including electronic voting machines and ballot counting systems. Dishonest, almost all. They're vulnerable and they're easily compromised, and people within our government knew that. Tonight, we're publishing a series of previously classified U.S. intelligence community assessments and other reports proving that our government has long known these machines are extremely exposed to attack. As one assessment states, we judge that the United States adversaries, including at a minimum Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, as well as non-state groups, have the capability to compromise U.S. election infrastructure. That's unquote, but that's some statement, isn't it? Made by supposedly great patriots of our country. The document goes on to further state that, quote, we assess that centralized election-related data repositories, such as voter registration databases, poll books, and other official election websites, are most vulnerable to exploitation, and adversaries could use this access to these systems to disrupt election processes within the United States of America.
Yeah, nothing to see here. Move along. On to the next thing. It's totally normal as a free society. Totally normal in a society where we're supposed to have implicit trust in our government, as we're told. Don't question anything. Don't look under the hood on anything. Just trust us. Trust me, bro. No problem here. Websites able to be compromised, voter registration data able to be compromised, the tabulators, the voting machines able to be compromised, but yeah, nothing actually going on here. How about some actual fraud? Because that was apparently going on as well, and nobody knew about it. Surprise, surprise.
The fourth set of documents reveals that even when significant evidence of fraud has been detected, it has been buried and covered up. Among the disclosures tonight are FBI files detailing evidence of alleged fraud by a large-scale voter registration operation in Michigan. In 2020, Michigan State Police raided a Democrat Get Out the Vote organization, corrupt group in Muskegon. And we're so concerned by what they found. They were just so concerned, they couldn't believe it, actually, that they contacted the FBI in Detroit. The documents state that some canvassers admitted to FBI agents that they signed voter registration forms in other people's names, submitted fraudulent registration for people who did not exist, and received gift cards tied to their number of applications that they produced. In other words, it was pay, play, and cheat. The FBI agents working on the case believe that crimes were committed, yet the Biden Department of Justice slow-walked the investigation and killed it. Tonight, I'm asking the FBI director to ensure that the matter is fully investigated and to work with the Department of Justice to prosecute those responsible for any crimes.
So a lot of what we had heard was that China stole some voter registration data, upwards of potentially 220 million records, that there was efforts that either did happen or could have happened to influence the U.S. election, to compromise data systems. And again, going back to the argument that's always made by the left, that there's no evidence of this, there's no proof to this, how dare you make these claims, how dare you make these accusations. There's as good of an example as you could possibly get. A Get Out the Vote organization in Michigan was raided by state police. The Federal Bureau of Investigations is called in by said state police. Individuals admit to the federal government, admit to the Federal Bureau of Investigations that they are committing a felony by misrepresenting voter registration forms, by signing up individuals to vote who are either A, did not consent to do so, or B, don't even exist. And Biden's Department of Justice killed the investigation, made sure that no charges were ever brought forward, and made sure that nobody was ever held to account. That is the system that you're supposed to trust. That is the system that is squeaky clean. That is the system that you are not allowed to question. How dare you for questioning said system? I would argue quite the contrary. If that information doesn't cause you to seriously question what you have been told in the past, then you're just not interested. You're not interested in making sure that the United States of America, the beacon of democracy, has free and fair elections. And for the vast majority of the Democrat Party, they can pay lip service to it all they want. Frankly, they don't care. They don't care. Because it's all politics. It's all political for them 24/7. If they cared, somebody would have went to jail. The individuals that were doing this in the state of Michigan would have been held to account. But that didn't happen. And obviously, when this was going on, it would have been very close to the election cycle, and the FBI hid it from President Donald Trump. Obviously, there was a turnover of government in early January of 2021, and the Biden Department of Justice decided, got a lot of stuff going on. We're not going to bother going down this rabbit hole. God forbid we make sure that the elections within the United States are free and fair. No, we wouldn't want to do that at all. That would just be crazy. That would just be a wild thing to take place. We are highlighting some of the details out of President Donald Trump's address to the nation Thursday night as he laid out a series of major vulnerabilities within the United States election systems. Whether this is China stealing more than 220 million voter registration data, pieces of data, dealing with hacking of voting files, talking about potentially printing ballots, a wide open election infrastructure system that is ripe for bad actors and hackers, actual fraud taking place in the state of Michigan that the federal government never did anything about. And then how about this? Hundreds of thousands of illegally registered voters in the United States. We already knew this was the case. Here's the president.
According to the DHS review, state voter rolls and public records, they identified approximately 278,000 non-citizens who are registered to vote in federal elections. Since Democrat states refuse to share their voter files, the real number is actually much higher than that. Yet, even this limited analysis found more than 250,000 foreigners illegally registered to vote. Put together, these disclosures reveal an election system so broken and so vulnerable that no one can possibly defend it. It is not defensible. Hundreds of millions of U.S. voter files are in the hands of foreign governments. Our machines and ballot counting systems are exposed to hacking and manipulation and corruption. China and other countries have been trying to meddle in our elections. Evidence of fraud has been buried. Hundreds of thousands of non-citizens and dead people are listed and active on the voter rolls, and yet we still have elections with no voter ID, no proof of citizenship, and tens of millions of ballots floating aimlessly through the mail. As one example of the insanity, California's recent election for mayor of LA and governor was held on June 2nd, a long time ago, but it was just completed a few days ago on July 10th. Think of that, much more than 1 month. Took a month to count the votes. I wonder what they were doing. This is worse than any third world country. There's no third world country that has elections like we have.
And that's the United States of America and its current election system. Instead of making sure that the public was aware, making sure that people knew potential risks, knew potential problems that were taking place, they hid it from the American people, they hid it from the president, they hid it from Congress, and hoped that nobody would ever find out. Now, people know. The president, addressing the nation last night, declassifying some of these documents, and the fair question is, all right, well, what do we do next?
My administration is in the process of notifying the states whose election data was compromised by the People's Republic of China and many others. We will be working closely to mitigate any harm, and we're taking swift action to ensure that sensitive voter data is better protected so we can never be bought, we can never be hacked, and we can never watch a stolen election again.
There's President Donald Trump addressing the nation about what his administration will be doing. And while, yes, all of that is good and all of that is important, there's a real simple solution to this. And a state like North Carolina has already come up with that solution. The voters of this state agreed with said solution and passed a ballot initiative to do so. It's called voter ID. This novel concept that you have to verify who you are before you vote. There is legislation that has been pending in the United States Senate now for months that would do just this. But because John Thune is so incredibly useless in his position as the Senate Majority Leader, it hasn't been done. The president, once again, ratcheting up his calls to pass the SAVE Act.
But most importantly, addressing this crisis of election security demands that Congress must pass the Save America Act. How easy is that to do unless you want to cheat? The only reason you wouldn't do it is you want to cheat because your policies are so bad and your candidates are so pathetic that you can't get away or can't get elected any other way. This landmark bill requires that all voters must show photo voter ID. How simple is that? Could I have your photo, please? Photo voter ID. All voters must provide proof of citizenship. Are you a citizen of our country, please? And hopefully there will be no corrupt mail-in ballots, which if you watched California and so many other places, mail-in ballots are inherently corrupt. So you would have no mail-in ballots except for illness, disability, military deployment, or travel if you're going away on business or vacation. These reforms are urgently needed to stop the vulnerabilities that I've mentioned. To all Americans, I ask you to pick up your phone tomorrow, call your representatives in the House and Senate, and demand that they pass the Save America Act without delay.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not going to happen. As we heard from J.D. Vance earlier this week, appearing on Joe Rogan, the Senate, and all of their wisdom, John Thune and all of his phenomenal leadership, refuses to deal with the filibuster and refuses to pass the SAVE Act. And because that's not going to happen, this is going to continue. Because blue states like California, New York, Illinois, they are going to continue with this process that makes sure, as legal residents and legal citizens vote, their votes are outweighed or nullified by individuals that A, shouldn't be here in the country to start off with, and B, definitely shouldn't be voting. So you've heard from the president. We played I don't know how many, like 12 clips from President Trump highlighting some of the details. This was the reaction from everybody's favorite Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. This is his statement. Tonight, referring to last night, was a pathetic attempt by Trump to deny what we all know is true. He lost the 2020 election. The American people were fed up with Donald Trump then, and they're even more fed up with him now as he sends costs skyrocketing, brings chaos to their streets, and enriches his friends and family through rampant corruption. That's probably my favorite line. Trump knows he has lost American families. He knows that he has made their lives more expensive, endangering their friends and families with unnecessary war, and embarrass the country on the global stage. And rather than pivot his policies, he is working to rig the midterms before a single vote has ever been cast. We won't let him. When it comes to the SAVE Act, the courts have rejected it. That's not true. Congress has rejected it. That's also not true. Even members of his own party have rejected it. Also not true. Give it up. The SAVE Act isn't going anywhere, period. Let's be clear. In America, voters choose their leaders, not the other way around. Democrats will fight like hell to make sure every American voter can cast their ballots freely without obstruction or interference from Donald Trump. Wow. Chuck Schumer claiming that the president of the United States is rigging the midterm elections. I was told you can't do that. I have been told for years that our system is totally impenetrable, that it is so safe, that it is so secure, that it can't be rigged. It's impossible. That's what people like Chuck Schumer have been saying now for a decade. Yet, in a statement after the president's address yesterday, he is now claiming that the president of the United States is working to, quote, rig the midterms before a single vote has even been cast, end quote. How do those two things exist at the same time? How do those two things exist at the same time? Can anybody tell me? How is it that these safe, secure election systems that Democrats will constantly reference can be rigged by Donald Trump? The answer is they're not being rigged by Trump. The answer is foreign adversaries have attempted and maybe have been successful in influencing U.S. elections. The solution to this, pass the SAVE Act. John Thune needs to step down as Speaker of the United States House, of the United States Senate, and put somebody in there that has the balls to do something that will get rid of this totally procedural process and ensure that voter ID is implemented in every single state across the nation. It is not burdensome to ask somebody to verify who they are. You have to do it in so many other elements and factors of your life. You do it at the bank. You do it at the grocery store. If you're buying alcohol, you do it at the liquor store. You do it at gas stations. You do it all the time. I saw a great post, kind of a comedy, it wasn't a comedy post. Somebody was messaging Olive Garden. You're familiar with the fast food, well, kind of fast food, but casual dining American food chain. So they've got this thing that's called like the Pasta Pass is what it's called. You pay for this thing and then you can just walk in and show this card. And to use the Pasta Pass at Olive Garden, a thing you pay for, you get like a you get like a little debit card, and you walk in and you can, I guess, use this thing to get unlimited pasta or something like that. To use that card, you have to show a valid photo ID. To get access to pasta from Olive Garden, you have to show an ID. To vote in an American election in the state of California, not only can you not show an ID, it is illegal for somebody to ask you to show your ID. I will argue if it is good enough for Olive Garden to verify your identification before serving you very mediocre food, then it should be good enough for the American people to do so. Comment coming in. I'm picking up towels at JCPenney today and need to show my government-issued photo ID, according to their email. Well, that's racist. You should stage a race protest in front of the JCPenney because it is incredibly bigoted and racist for anybody to ask you to show your ID. Of course, that's what you have consistently heard from the Democrat Party. There is no spin on this. I've been watching MSNBC since 4:30 this morning. They, of course, won't buy into this. They're not interested in talking about it. Now they're going to claim that Trump is rigging the midterms. I mean, these people are just totally out to lunch. Totally out to lunch. They're not interested in the truth. They're not interested in being open and honest with the American people. And so because of that, we're going to continue to question our system. We're going to continue to question what is going on until we feel that what we're being told is honest and accurate. And I can say to you very clearly here as we are here near the midpoint of July 2026, I don't feel that way right now because we know that we've been lied to and now it is verified. So major announcement by President Donald Trump and his administration last night. We will keep an eye on this. We'll see if John Thune can get his head out of his ass and actually do something with the SAVE Act. I don't suspect that will actually be the case, and we'll keep an eye on those details as they continue to unfold right here on the Nick Craig Show. Coming up on Monday, fingers crossed, unless something crazy happens over the weekend, which seemingly happens on a more regular basis, we will be diving into one of the most damning reports I have ever seen about a local government surrounding the town of Cary, North Carolina, a suburb in Wake County. A more than 2,600 page report from the North Carolina State Auditor's Office shows complete and total incompetence. We'll hopefully be diving into those details Monday morning right here on the Nick Craig Show. All right, that's going to do it for a Friday edition. Thanks to the Law Group here in Wilmington for their continued support. LawGroupNC.com or 910-251-6088. The Nick Craig Show streams live weekday mornings, 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook. Is available 24/7 in your favorite podcast app and is available and is heard weeknights, 9 to 10 p.m. on WBT Radio in Charlotte. Enjoy your weekend. We're back Monday morning right here on the Nick Craig Show.